In this lesson, we will review how Autodesk Inventor allows us to show 2D sketch constraints and also how to delete 2D sketch constraints. First of all, from the 2D sketch panel, we can display individual constraints on a given object by selecting the Show Constraints tool from the sketch panel. Now, as I move my cursor back over a given object, I can select on that, and that object's constraints will appear in the sketch. So in this case, you can see that they're fairly small, and we can control the size of that from the Tools pull-down menu under Application Options, and from the Sketch tab, you'll notice that we have the Constraint toolbar Scale. So I'm going to pump that up. Let's click on the Apply button. Move this over. Definitely a lot easier for us to see. So let's review these very quickly here. So now that I have a couple of these constraint sizes up here, as I select on that given icon for that constraint, in this case it's the tangent constraint, you'll notice that it is highlighting the object that the line is tangent to. So the same with the perpendicular. So the fixed constraint is showing me what is fixed, and then I have my coincident constraints. So the same thing that's happening here. As I would go back and move the cursor over the object itself, you'll notice here that it's highlighting the constraint that is in relationship to that object. So in this case, see, I'm getting a whole bunch of constraints that are appearing here. So now to delete one of those constraints, let's say I want to delete the fixed constraint, I can click on that and click on Delete from the menu, or that was of course done with a right mouse click. If I wanted to delete that, I could just select on it and press Delete from the keyboard and it'll disappear. So what's nice with these sketch constraints is I drag the geometry, the constraints will be in relationship to their location. As it moves up or down, left or right, the constraints will go along with it. Now, I can also close out of these toolbars, if you will, by clicking on the X. And of course, I can drag it by selecting on the two vertical lines. Let's zoom back up on just this specific area here. So I can also display all of the constraints by right-clicking and click on Show Constraints, or the shortcut is going to be the F8 key. And as you can see here, all of the constraints for all of the objects in that sketch appear here. So as I zoom in tighter, I may want to move some of these around, so you get a better idea what's happening here. So just like I was showing before, as I move my cursor over that specific constraint, it's highlighting it both in the graphics window, and it's also highlighting it for the other relationship, or in this case also the constraint, in this case the vertical constraint here. So you'll notice a lot of these icons here are the coincident constraints. So maybe I don't want to display all the coincident constraints, kind of taking up a lot of real estate. So what I'm going to do, first of all, I'm going to hide all the constraints, or the shortcut key is going to be F9. So all I did is right mouse click, hide all constraints, or again F9. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click. We have a new option called Constraint Visibility. So with Constraint Visibility, check on that. I can go back and control which constraints I want to see for that specific sketch. So in this case, I'm going to say I do not want to see the coincident constraints. So now let's display all of our constraints. And you'll notice none of the coincident constraints are appearing. That doesn't mean that they're not still there. They're just not visible on these given tools. So as you are working, feel free to go back and add and remove constraints as needed. There is no direct science in regards to which constraint to apply first. It's all in relationship to the sketch that you are trying to create.